Make sure everything's working first before I get into this. We're going to go to the Jonathan Little stuff pretty quick, but I do want to go over my play from yesterday. So here's the graph. It's just the first thing that came up. I usually don't show it. This was for all the tournaments. It's shown in chips. As you can see, I kind of ran very close to expectation. This is the funny part. Yesterday, I only had four entries into four tournaments. That was it. It was the lowest buy-in day that I've had, total cost in like, it's got to be months. Like, it's just freaky. And you can see it's freaky because I never had to re-enter because my chips that I won was very close to the chips won at Showdown, which was above the expected chips won. So I ran a little good. So this means that early on I won some races. It means that my big hands held up. It wasn't so much a suck out as it was, just not getting the negative side of variance. Like you can see, like we diverge a little bit where I like must have had like an ace king versus or ace queen versus an ace king and won that race. There was a hand I remember in here, this big jump where there's a pitfall in the expectation where I got it in with aces versus or queens versus aces, and I won with the queens. So I ran pretty good early on. It ended up being a little bit depressing because I only won like, I don't know, like a half a buy-in on the day, but it's a volatile Sunday, man. There's not much you can really do about it. Overall, now I feel like I like my play. This is kind of what's bothering me right here. The red line starts to drop off. I didn't get that many opportunities to steal. Red line is the amount of chips you win without the showdown. So I kind of ended up in multi-way pots where it wasn't good to c-bet or make moves. I didn't really get much chance to make moves yesterday, which is kind of upsetting to me because I feel like that's how you win poker tournaments. It's winning all the pots, that don't really belong to you. But that being said, sometimes the situations aren't there. Like if you're sitting on, a big pile of blinds, you don't always have to make all the moves. You can kind of bide your time and, wait for good spots and all like that. And it's always a delicate balance for me between waiting for good spots and making sure that I'm not underactive versus being overactive and just trying to force too many wins. Now, if I had my choice, I'd rather be overactive if I'm going to have a flaw either way, because I'm going to win a whole shitload of pots being overactive. And as long as I can recognize when I'm beat, I'm not going to lose the big ones. So that's fine. And you can see at the end here, the values came together and ran a little bad, took some beats. That's right there at the end. That's where the line crosses. That's where the big beats happen, right towards the end of the day, which is the worst time for them to happen because you're so invested and then you're just out. So, yeah, it's whatever. Let's go over to the hands that I have marked off that I wanted to look at. Here we are. Where is it? Statistics. Okay, there we go. And we'll highlight them both. And all the hands show only marked hands. 19 hands in the report, not too bad. Let's go ahead and do it by entry time. Let's see. All hands. There we go. Am I going to play the video? Yeah, in like 15-20 minutes after I go over the hands from the day. I'm going to get into the Jonathan Little stuff. I want to finish this first section, which is a little dense, but there's only two parts of it left. So, yeah, we're gonna do the study sesh after I go over my hands from yesterday. This is part of study for me. So, pocket kings, interesting. We raise on the button, 50 big blinds effective. I meant the vid, the hands. Oh yeah, the hands. Yeah. We're going over the hands now. Let's see here. Comes off Jack 10-5. I decided to go ahead and bet standard. This is one I remember I had a vibe on it that I wanted to bet standard because I wanted it to look like See, here's the thing. If this board had come out ace 10-5, right? And I bet this standard, I'm going to get folds a ton of the time because it looks like a board that's good for me as the opener versus the defender. The defender is in the blind is going to have a lot of Broadway cards. They're going to have a lot of pairs. They're going to have a lot of suited connectors. They're not going to have too many aces. So when an ace hits, this is a pretty easy steal, right? But I have kings. The difference is this board contains Jack 10-5, which has a lot of draws, you know, flush draw, straight draw. It also has a Jack and a 10. Those are cards that can very easily exist in my opponent's hand. So betting big here isn't really necessary because unless he just flopped 2 pair and just outflop me with Jack 10 randomly, then I'm good. But I want him to get money in the pot. And he may do something silly. So I went with a standard bet rather than a 2/3 pot bet where if, like, I had pocket 10s and the board was 7-4 deuce, I might go with a bigger bet. You know what I'm saying? Because this is kings. We're trying to get value. He does do something kind of silly. He check raises me. This is a lot of draws. This is a lot of top pairs, things like that. I decided to just call it. And this is a sword that cuts both ways because if he is check raising me on a draw, I'm letting him draw for the price he set. But if the draw misses the turn, we're going to have some fireworks. So, and it's only because it's kings or aces that I would do this with. And obviously holding the king of spades in my hand is excellent. King on the turn, probably the worst card in the deck for my opponent if he's on a draw, but he's not going to stop betting. How often does he have ace queen? Never. That's a 3-bet from the big blind. How often does he have queen 9? Sometimes. It's a feasible draw. The most common draws going on right now are things like, queen 9 or the spades or like jack queen or even king jack can be there a lot. King queen can be there a lot. Now, of course, we have the other kings, so that's kind of hard to have. 8-9 is a lot. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So just because queen 9 got there, it's not going to slow me down. You say, well, your hand just got so much stronger. Not really, because I understand the value of those kings on the flop. My hand is probably equally as strong versus the range, meaning I was either crushing him when he has just one pair or he still has a draw, and now I just took away some outs from him because he can't hit the jack of spades, right? If he's on a spade draw, So he decides to go ahead and bet, and his bet is not really in line with anything. If he's check raising on a draw, he should be betting big, right? He should be betting really big to try to push me off of something that obviously now has him beat. If I had ace king and he check raised me and I had the ace king of whatever with the ace of spades and I hit a king on the turn, he should be betting bigger to discourage me from continuing, to try to convince me, right? So this bet here is kind of like, I'm kind of worried about the king, but I don't really have the ability to check when the board texture changes. So I just went ahead and blasted it for a pot-sized bet, and I did this super quick in-game, and that's a Matt Affleck thing that he does, where if you just immediately bet quickly, players don't think what's going on, and they make really dumb mistakes. And this player ended up getting it in, and the thing to remember is, if he had folded, right, he would still have 30 blinds left. It's kind of a lot. It leaves him 10,000, which isn't great, but so maybe it's a fuck it stack because he's going to re-enter. But this was a 1650 buy-in, so it's kind of a lot. It wasn't very frivolous. The blinds aren't exactly high, but, at the same time, it's whatever. We are in the first 3 or 4 stages of this tournament. I decided to make the raise very quickly. He decides, fuck it. If I'm going to call, I might as well go all in. Obviously, that's good for us. The river comes off. I'm glad we got the money in because the dude had ace-jack. Tell me how you get the money in here on the turn unless you've played this hand pretty much like this. A weak or standard c-bet, a raise, a just call, a king on the turn, a bet, and then this monster raise that never looks like a king or ace queen, right? He never thinks that's what we have here. So, but I'm going to play aces and kings this way every time. So it's an interesting method, and you do have to kind of stay calm when you see the check raise, because if I just blast the flop, he's probably not going all in. He's gonna figure it out for 100 big blind pot, but he didn't, because we let the call on the turn happen, or on the flop happen. Little 5-6 in the big blind, we defend. Flop a gutty. Goes check around, we make the gutty. Very interesting. Obviously, we lose to, 10 jack and, 10-6. But really, are we worried about that? Like, 10-6 can only come from here. 10 jack can come from here and here. But that's not a lot of combinations of hands, man. If you're going to worry about that, you need to, reevaluate your life. And this is the one where we just doubled up, have 100 blinds, and we kind of want to get it all here. So, player leads for really big, like 80% pot here. This, to me, tells me he's got something he likes, and he wants to get all the money in right now. If you have 10 jack or 10-6, do you care when the money goes in on this flop? Like, what are you up against that's going to outdraw you? Nothing, right? Unless somebody has specifically a set of 9s or 7s or something like that, there's nothing that's going to outdraw you. Your hand is what it is. So at this point, I know that I'm good, and I have no worries. And I'm also very aware that this player wants to get all the money in because of the size of his bet. So, of course, I go ahead and make a raise. Not a huge raise, but it was one of those fast raises again, where I just kind of clicked it back plus a couple blinds. Player goes ahead and over jams 48 blinds right here. Very easy call for us. And my man got it in with ace-10. Top pair, open ender. That's it. Now, the funny part is here, because he's out of position, he can't bet the flop. But on the turn, if he had bet, he should have bet something smaller. But let's say he does this and I raise. If he calls, he still has 35 blinds left. Like, he can then on the river, get it in conceivably when a jack hits or a 6 hits. But getting it in there is just like you're always behind, bro. You're at least up against 2 pair, at least. So this is one where the immediate raise worked out well, and his bet size told us that he wanted to get the money in. Aces. All right, we see a raise. I go ahead and make a small. Now, this player only has 20 blinds. We're a lot deeper in this tournament at this point. This player only has 20 blinds. I decided to do something that I rarely do, where I make a very small raise from the big blind. I don't do this a lot, but the feeling was this player just got to the tournament. He was kind of late regging, and I'm making a weak 3-bet to make it look like, okay, dude, if you don't have anything, you can't continue. This only works in very specific situations, and I guessed this one right because the player went ahead and jammed the 22 blinds and had ace-queen. And it only really works if somebody has a hand like ace-queen offsuit. Ace-queen suited even just calls. Now, granted, we probably would have gotten it in at some point, but it's just a good little thing to remember that sometimes just reopening the betting. I mean, the player had 20 blinds, right? The guy had, what did he start the hand with? He started with like 22 blinds. So he kind of doesn't have many folds when 3-bet. So if we had jammed on him, then he can fold, right? And if I have 20 blinds and I have a hand like, king, queen, queen, jack, things like that, I'm going to jam on him, which interestingly is going to get the fold. But when I re-raise pre-flop, it allows him to jam and think that he has that equity against me. Now, because my hand is so strong, he absolutely doesn't. But it's an interesting way to break that down and just flip the script back to the other guy. Pocket eights. We'll go ahead and call on the button. It checks all the way around. And these are the boards that are kind of scary to people. They don't really realize that this guy opened, this guy called, I called, this dude defended the blind. This guy didn't c-bet. So unless he's trapping the ace, which means he would have to have exactly ace-king, or ace-queen, really, then my eights are good quite often. Now, there's a scenario here, because there's 4 of us in the pot, I think very few players are disciplined enough to check this 2-check raise, because they know it's not very often someone's going to bet. So if you had ace-king here, I think super rarely you're going to check here, especially out of position into 4 players. you're going to want to start building this pot. You do have it locked up, but you got to look for a way to make money. So I think betting a third pot standards continuation bet on this would be the move. And in all honesty, with eights, I would have just called it. And then I'd have to see what happens on the turn. And then on the turn, if you were to check, I would bet, and then, we'd go from there. But everybody checks around. I'm betting this hand for protection. I don't have to go crazy big, just like 55, 60% pot, because it is into 4 players. The bet plays larger because there's so many more opportunities to get called. So my hand just kind of looks like an ace. And the funny part is this player can have pocket 10s, jacks. He can honestly have queens still. He can have kings, I guess. Kings not so likely because I think even that bets the flop here to really find out if you're up against an ace. I don't do it, but a lot of players do. But this player can have a lot of pairs that beat me that hate the ace. But because of his position, I get to take the pot away. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm fairly certain that I was beaten here by somebody's pocket pair. And this is one where position pretty much played the entire hand out. So just a little illustration of how strong position is. Pocket fives, we see a raise in first. We go ahead and call. We see a re-raise all in for 12.6. It's kind of gross because when this player folds, I had to make the call. Now, what I'm going to do is I wanted to use the methods that Jonathan Little's using that showed us about when we have to call to work this hand out. And in game, I knew it immediately, but I wanted to illustrate it here. So it's 12.63 is what his bet all in is, plus 0.96 blinds for antes, plus 0.5 for the small blind, plus 2 blinds for the guy who raised, plus my 2 blinds is what we're facing. It's going to cost me 11.63 to call this bet. So 1809 plus 11.63 blinds. 29.72 divided by my bet, right, that I have to call, because remember, or sorry, actually that's one less, minus 1, because it cost me 10.63 to call. So divide this number by what it cost me to call, right, the total pot after the call divided by what it cost me to call is 10.63. So 2.7 to 1. Very easily divide 1 by 2.7. We need to be good 37% of the time, okay? I'm fairly certain a small blind jam, let's bring up Equilab, okay? Small blind jam on 12 big blinds, here's what we can do. If we want to figure versus a perfect GTO range, we can bring up Jonathan Little's tools section. So here's the tools section. The Gto Tournament Charts. This is a perfect GTO range we're working with. Okay, so we're fighting against that. So if somebody has 12 blinds and their position is the small blind versus a raise, and the opponent's position is the under the gun, this is what their shoving range looks like. Okay, these hands in here. Now we can take some of this away and make the range wider because of the fact that I called, because he's playing a squeeze. Okay, so the way that I like to do that is take the position of the second player and factor in the range against that versus under the gun. Okay, so as the second player, I'm in the hijack. So if you're in the small blind and versus a raise from the hijack, this is now your jamming range. And you see how it gets so much bigger, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in Equilab. It's down to ace-8 offsuit, all the aces over. And what else? King-9 suited. Looks like Queen-10 suited. Looks like Jack-10 suited. And that's it, right? King-Queen off. Yeah, we got it. King-Jack off. Okay, that's the cut. And then all the pairs, right? Down to threes. I could have just entered this in, but I'm clicking it because I want to make sure I get them all. Okay. So now we're going to apply this. And now versus our exact hand. Doop. Versus our exact hand of 5 of clubs, 5 of diamonds. How do we stack up versus this range? Boom, 47%. And you can see I only needed, what do we figure out? 37%. So I'm crushing here, right? So this is just an auto call. And I knew this in game, but now you can see how this is applied in your head after you've practiced this a bunch of times, how you can quickly come to this. You know what I'm saying? I think this is actually still good enough to call versus because of the price versus the under the guns range opening versus my range. But this is a practical way to implement strategies. Do you think you might be giving other players too much credit? Honest question, not trying to be an ass. Yeah, I do give them a lot of credit. Here's the thing. At the stakes I'm playing right now, players make their best moves pre-flop all in. That's when players play their best. And when I say best, I mean approaching GTO, approaching game theory optimal. That is when players play their best. So I ran that hand. You saw the range of hands, all pairs, king queen offsuit plus, king jacks or jack 10 suited plus, all the aces, and the ace down to ace 8 plus. I would bet you that even a novice player who doesn't have any idea what GTO is will shove that range from the small blind here about 80% of the time. If they have no idea what GTO is and they're just looking at their cards and they're going, well, this is good enough, that's why GTO works. And that's when these players are the strongest. Pre-flop, all in. Anything other than all in, it's a different story. But this player is doing something absolutely correct here, and my call is absolutely correct. The fact of the matter is, versus that range of hands, I am going to win 47% of the time. I only need to win 37% of the time for it to be profitable, and I can definitely take the hit because it's only a quarter of my chips. And as you'll see, this is one of the ones that was well in that range, pocket threes, and I just had him dominated. This is the best case scenario for me, sure, but you know, if he shoves a lot of hands here, I still win. All the unpaired cards without a king, I win. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what's up, Sotos? How you doing, my man? Good to see you. I think I've seen that name before. Yeah. So this is just one of those situations. So am I giving them too much credit? No, I don't think so, but I do think that's when most players at this level are game theory optimal. All in pre-flop is where they find the true value of their hands in a GTO sense. So, yeah. Let's see here. Pocket nines. We see a bunch of limps. This was happening a lot yesterday. For some reason, over the past month, I have seen more limping in tournaments than I think I've seen in the last year. Maybe there's an influx of new players. I don't know. But either way, I have discounted all limps. Very rarely is somebody trapping, limping in first. I've just decided, you know what? If this was a cash game and I saw these limps, I would make this raise. So fuck them, I made the raise. And it folds around to the second caller. Comes off king, king, deuce. Honestly, not a bad flop for me. I'm going to go ahead and check it, though, because I want to get value. That's really my thinking here, and I believe I said that at the time. The 9 comes off on the turn, which obviously makes me very happy, because now my opponent can have the spades. He can have, he can have something. It's not likely he has a king because he just limped pre-flop, but he can have spades, and we could get paid by that. That's true. Because my hand is so strong now, I decided to check it back. And the river's a 10. Now there's straights possible, there's spades possible, there's pair of 10s might be good. I'm giving him a chance to get there. The hand is just so strong. He checks, and I decide to make the bad bluff size that I don't recommend of half pot. This is where I'm trying to get called by, the crying call, by like a 10 or maybe a deuce or pocket 8s or something, And I did get called, and the player had pocket 6s. I actually forgot that. That's funny. And at no point, if I had bet before the river, was I getting any money out of this situation. So I'm glad I played it this way. I think I got the max. I think maybe I could have bet a little bit bigger, maybe something like a blind or two more, but it's very negligible. And I think this is one where I was able to, you know, juice the rock and get some blood from a stone. You know what I'm saying? Tend to have diarrhea of the mouth on the keyboard. No, it's all good. I like the chatting. It's not much you get engagement in poker streams. You know, people tend to just watch or have it on in the background. People don't chat much in the stream. And that's true for all streamers. I was watching one with Tonka the other day with like 4,000 players. Nobody typed a damn thing until he like won a hand. It was crazy. 4,000 chatters. So this is one I wanted to run. This one I feel like is close because this jam range is looser than 25 big blinds. This is like a 20 big blind jam range because there's so many hands in here. And I wanted to run this one personally to see if I made a mistake. So I'm going to open up Equilab and we're going to do this one again. So we're going to go to Jonathan Little's poker site. I'm going to get the GTO charts for this at 20 big blinds and 25 big blinds and find the range. But first, I guess we should figure out the percentage I need to win, right? So it's this guy's bet of 24. Oh, God damn it. Fat fingers. 24.56 plus the blinds. It's 1.5 plus the antes plus my 2.5. And it's going to cost me 22.06 to call. Right? 51.6 divided by my call, 22.06. So I'm getting 2.3 to 1. That's not bad. We're going to go 1 divided by 2.3. So 43% of the time, right? So if this is a race, then I'm cool. I'm sorry, guys. I got a text here. I got to answer. It might be Courtney. Oh, yeah, it is her. Cool. I'm on stream. She's headed home. She had a nice night, and she's headed home. So 43% of the time. So let's call it because we want to be winning. Oh, my God. Why are you texting? You know that makes a sound. Oh, my God. To text me okay. Fun fact for everybody out there, if the answer is okay and I've made a definitive statement, you don't have to text me okay. So I guess in a perfect world, I'd want to have 45% to call this bet, right? Now we're going to get into some other factors. So let's bring up the charts. And I'm just showing you how we work out the implementable strategies here. It's in the tools section. GTO charts. Okay, you are on the button, right? You have 25 blinds. Your position is the button versus a raise from who? From the low jack. Okay? The opponent's position is the low jack. What hands are you supposed to jam all in with? Ace, king off, king, jack suited, queen, jack suited, ace, queen off. Not very many hands, right? This is, and pocket nines, pocket tens. This is a super tight jamming range. And I'm going to show you, now we're going to figure this out more reasonably. I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you what the realistic range here is too. So it's king, jack suited, queen, jack suited. Queen jack isn't even 100%. Ace king off, ace queen off, tens, nines, eights. Okay, I'm going to give them eights because it's a little closer. Okay, we're going to apply that versus my exact hand, the king of diamonds, jack of diamonds. What's my equity? 43.8%. So I'm actually close to break even right now, right, on this jam. Hey, what's up, Gray Fox? How you doing? So now, but let's look at a more realistic range, okay? So this is the range at 25 big blinds, but our opponent has a little less than that, and honestly, a lot of players, this is one where players make a mistake quite often, and I mean quite often, where they start jamming too widely because they have 25 blinds and not 20 blinds. So if we figure this for 20 blinds, then the jamming range looks more like this, okay? Ace king suited, ace queen suited, the king 10 suited comes in, the queen king suited comes in, pocket queens get jammed now, so do jacks, sevens, fours. That's interesting. See, look at this. Sevens, eights, sixes are only 24%, 45% at fives. Fours get jammed 86% of the time. Fours jamming more than fives. I always think it's funny when you find things like that because there are mathematical reasons. You know, the straights you make and the fact that your opponent's not going to have a pair often enough when you have fours for you to be dominated. And we go down to the ace-jack offsuit. So this is the 20 big blind range, okay? And if we apply that and reevaluate, we're actually worse off now because there's so many more strong hands that this player is supposed to jam, right? Like before, the player didn't jam pocket queens, jacks, or tens. They called with those hands because they'd rather see a flop and get value. But when you have 20 big blinds, you're playing the hand for all of it right now because you don't want the board to come off and you'd rather just take it down or get it all in good versus ace king and ace queen. So the range actually becomes tighter. So we need 45%. It's almost there. So let's just say if we mix the two ranges, it's about break even. Well, that's a good way to answer the question right now as to why not to call it. You don't want to be taking break even propositions that could ruin your day. We want to be winning at some percentage. We want to be, we need a 43%, equity. We want to have, 45, maybe 47% equity to profitably make the call. That's in cash games, mostly. At this stage of the tournament, right, the average stack is 44K, which means we're deep, okay? The average in the tournament is double the starting stack. That means that half the players have been eliminated. So I have a stack of 67,000. This player just entered a little bit ago with 20K, and he's just jamming, right? Losing this pot, losing 25K would put me back at the average chip stack, which wouldn't be a disaster. But winning this pot wouldn't do as much for me as losing would hurt me. I mean, if I win it, then what? I go up to 94,000, which is great. But you can see that's a 30,000 chip jump, whereas the downside being a 27,000 chip loss hurts me way more in the long run. So this is one that we could just give up. And it was close. And at the time, I was sitting there hemming and hawing going, this is super close, because even subconsciously, I knew that it was very close. But in a game strategy, from a game strategy point of view, it's a fold. It's just too much risk. You know what I'm saying? In this situation, I want to have 65%. So check this out. Versus the same range, we go to the tools, hand range calculator. I want 65%. That's what I want versus the range. So what hands do I need to be calling with? Queen, queen plus. Queen, queen plus, it's a snap, right? And you can see versus exactly queen, queen plus, we're actually in game, we're 77%. Even though versus that range, we're only 65, we pick up more because of all the times we dominate. So yeah, queens plus here is a call from me. I'm actually curious. Jacks plus, what that is. Yeah, it doesn't go down much. But yeah, I would say queens is a snap call here. Probably tens is a snap call here based on what the player's doing, but Qui-Gon Bro, good luck. Going to be in Vegas on Friday, most likely for a couple days. What are some of the best dinner spots on the Strip? Love Carbones and What's SW? I don't know SW. Carbone's, though, right? Isn't that the place at the M? Oh, no. Anthony's. The M. If you get down to the M, which is a great casino, very clean, kind of a locals place, but very swanky, go to Anthony's, the steakhouse, or the Laughing Grape. It's either the Laughing Grape or the Crying Grape. Oh, Southwestern, Aria. Oh, okay. The Aria, Steve Wynn. Yeah. The Steve Wynn. Not the Southwestern. That's funny. God, that place was a nightmare for me when I drove Uber. The Southwestern, because it was right in the dead ass middle of the strip. Ugh. No, it was a Best Western, whatever it was. But yeah, I like the places at the M. They're really good. You can't beat the Bellagio Sunday brunch if they're still doing it. I don't know if they are. Vegas is very different now, my man. The Rona is no joke out here, so be very careful, please. I want you to enjoy your vacation, but wear your mask and try to avoid crowds as best you can. It's hard to do being on the strip, but be smart. Keep your mask on, and there's no shame in wearing 2 masks, honestly. So you can see in game, I was like, this is so close, and it was, because it was close to break even. If you think about it in those terms, it's not close at all. We should just fold, and I did. And I ended up getting all this from this player later, which was really hilarious. Just because he kept doing the same thing. Ace-3 suited. We see a raise. I got to put this back to... There we go. The stupid is no joke out here. Yeah, it really is bad. People are very careless. It's mostly the tourists that they come out here and they think it's like Disneyland. They think, oh, it's the safest place in the world. It's really not. The M is the MGM Grand? No. The M Hotel and Casino is south of the Strip, south of South Point. It's on Las Vegas Boulevard, but you got to go way south, right? And it's a beautiful hotel. It's never packed. Great games if you like slots and shit like that. I go out there with the wife, when we do go out. She loves that place. And the food is fucking phenomenal. It's just called the M. It's I believe it's a Stations Casino, but it's just called the M. It's really great. Amazing pool, too. I used to take my girlfriend to that. We went a couple times just to hang out and have drinks. I think she had friends in from the Philippines, and we went down to the pool and checked it out. And they just let us come down there and hang out. We didn't have to pay an admission. It was very cool. And, just had some drinks. And that was fun. Oh, it's not a station casino? What is it? What is the M? I forget what it is. It might just be an independent, but it's a fantastic casino, and it's not too crazy raucous, right? It's not overly crowded during the day. You'll see a lot of regulars. You see a lot of locals, and you get a lot of good deals. Like if you go there and sign up for a player card, I think they give you a free play immediately, and they give you some kind of discount at Anthony's because they're all about the amenities. It's also, what's the restaurant called there? Anthony's. Anthony's is the steakhouse, and the Laughing Grape. It's either the Laughing Grape or the Crying Grape. I think it's the Laughing Grape. It's a winery and restaurant, and it's really amazing food. And I actually used to, when I drove Uber, I used to camp out there and just pick up the people from there. Got a much better class of people from that place, even if they weren't locals. Like there's a lot of businessmen. It's also the official hotel of the Raiders. So they have the Raiders store there. They have the Raider restaurant. It's crazy because it's such a higher class place, but the Raiders took it as their place because the Raider training field is like 1.5 miles away. So the Raiders training camp is very close to this place. And I've driven a couple guys who were on the Raiders. It's very cool. And you don't realize Grape Street Wine Bar. That could be it. I think the actual restaurant is called the Laughing Grape, but the wine bar is Grape Street. Speaking of steakhouses, avoid the Rio Steakhouse. Worst steak I ever had. I would avoid the Rio completely. Here's the thing. I know the World Series is there, but this is like this is the last year they're going to have it there. The place is falling the fuck apart. I mean, I'm not going to the World Series, one, because of bankroll. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have the bankroll to play anything. But two, I wouldn't even go there for small Saturday events that I wanted to play because of the Corona thing. It's just never been great. Everybody who plays the World Series, you get sick anyway. Before Corona, people got, what we called the WSOP flu, which is just because you're just exposed to so many people, and we were idiots. We should have worn masks. The Japanese guys always wore masks. It's a very cultural thing, and I bet you they got sick far less than us. The only time you saw the Japanese guy without his mask was when he pulled it down to smoke. Don't be started in agreement. Rio sucks. It really does, and it's because they're almost over. That place is going to be done in a year because they're losing the World Series. It's moving over to Bally's, which is fucking bananas that they're going to hold the World Series at Bally's. Holy shit. That's going to be a shit show. Like, I used to have this dream when I started playing poker, right? Of like someday winning all the money in the world. And then when the World Series became very popularized, much later, it was like, oh, I want to win a bracelet. And then when I saw, the exalted heights of, these great players of, oh, what a bracelet means, I was just like, I have to win a bracelet. I have to win a bracelet. In the last fucking 7-8 years, there's been so many bracelet events and so many satellites. It's just like, it's another tournament. It doesn't mean shit. So the only goals I have in poker is to win money. I don't give a fuck about a title anymore. Maybe that comes with age. It would be nice, but I had a dream once, like literally I was asleep and I had a dream that I was on the final table of the main event. And this was after that show Tilt came out on ESPN. And I think it was because I was just watching that. And there was a situation where I was the chip leader and we made a deal. And these guys said, we'll give you, this much by ICM, but we play for the bracelet. And I said, give me first place money, all the first place money, and you can have the fucking bracelet. I don't give a shit. And it was a difference of like, 15% on my prize pool. And they took the deal, and I was like, fucking morons. And I just remember that, to me, that dream stuck with me because it's like, the title doesn't mean anything anymore. You know what I'm saying? The main event champion, sure. But who won it 2 years ago? Congratulations. You're the rest of the world. Nobody fucking cares. What do you think is the best place to stay on the Strip Friday through Sunday price-wise? On the Strip? I say don't. Stay at Green Valley Ranch. Stay at the Silverton. Stay at the South Point. It's very close. It's a 5-minute Uber ride, 10-minute Uber ride away from the Strip. But you don't want to stay on the Strip, my man. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm shitting on it, but it's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of hustle bustle. It's a lot of... You want to be able to get away from the Strip when you're done partying. You know what I'm saying? Like, my parents had their, I think it was like their 42nd wedding anniversary, and they came out here, and they got a room at the Bellagio, and they said it was their 42nd wedding anniversary, and they said, oh my God, well, we're going to give you a suite in the top, the presidential, whatever and they gave them this beautiful suite. My mother calls me the next morning and says, this suite sucks. And I was like, why? She's like, we're on the front facing the Strip. There's noise, at 3 a.m, and they're in their 70s, so they're going to bed at like 11 o'clock, midnight when they're partying, and there's just so much noise all night long. The flashing lights, they have blackout curtains, didn't fucking matter. It looked like a disco ball behind their thing. So I called the hotel and said, look, this is the situation. And they said, oh, we have the same suite on the opposite side away from the Strip. We'll transfer them. And they did. And it was much better. But they said they'll never stay on the Strip again, no matter how nice the fucking hotel is. It is convenient to be able to stumble back when you're shit-faced, though. Yeah, but I got to tell you, my man, Eric, I thought that was Hazard still talking. I got to tell you, Eric, it is nice, but it's much easier to stumble to an Uber than it is back to your room at Caesars. Believe it or not. Like, if you're not alone, I would do the thing of staying off Strip and taking Ubers. If you're alone, I could see getting way too drunk, but then you got other issues. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend staying on the Strip. Plus, now that they've raised the prices back, it's overpriced. It's just not worth it again. Like, it was always overpriced, but then they lowered the prices because of Corona and shit. And nobody was coming here. That lowered the people. That lowered the class of people you get. People who could never take a trip to Vegas are suddenly coming out here for $20, getting plane tickets for $80. And the Strip became, for a good long while, and it still is in some areas, like down by Circus Circus, south of the Wynn, or north of the Wynn, it became a bad neighborhood. Like, I drove Courtney on it because she didn't understand, and I showed her, and it looked like downtown LA. It was shit. It was really fucking dangerous. I don't drink here in town because I like to drive home, but I live here too. Oh, yeah. Well, I know that, Eric. So let's see. We defend the ace-3. We flop the world. This hand makes me very proud right here. So look at this. I have a pair and the nut flush draw, backdoor straight draw. I got it all, right? And it's just me and the blind and this guy, right? So it goes check, check. It checks around. And I said in game, how bad do I want the ace of spades to hit the turn? And the ace of clubs hit. Same thing, right? Does my name give it away? That's funny. So I was praying for an ace, and I said it out loud, and the ace hits the turn. And the reason why I want that is because this player is very likely to have an ace. Now I have two pair with almost no vulnerability. I'm so happy, right? Then this player bets half pot. What the fuck happened? What the fuck just happened? This guy's in the small blind, betting into a pot where an ace just hit, and there's a flush draw on board, and there's two other players in the pot, and he's betting half pot. This isn't a small bet into three players. Like, if he had bet a third pot, I could see it as a steal. But this is straight half pot. What the fuck is going on here? So I just called it because I felt like, I don't know what's happening. And, of course, my friend called it because he's very likely to have an ace. Then the turn comes off, and the dude bets monstrous. He bets 2/3. So, what the fuck is going on? I have it all. Don't I have it all? But the reality here is that somebody could have a hand like ace-7, which is unlikely at this point. They could have led the ace, but very unlikely. Somebody could definitely have a hand like ace-8 and have outdrawn me on the turn. It's possible 4-5 is out there. It's very interesting. 5-6, not so much, but 4-5, very possible. This is one where the hands that are strong enough to beat me bet like this. The hands that are good that I beat don't bet this way because they have doubt, right? So if somebody had 8-7, 8 deuce, deuce tray, ace deuce, something like that, they're not betting like this. They're betting smaller because they know their hand's not a lock. So this bet just screamed to me, this is a lock. And I was like, well, I'm going to get to see it anyway because this dude's going to call because he has an ace. So I folded, I called it, sorry. I thought about it. This is a different one. I did just call it. This player overcalled, which is hilarious. And he has the ace-queen, and there's the pocket deuces. I wish I'd folded this one in retrospect, but the fact that I only lost that bet, I should have folded the river. I mean, and I thought about it afterwards, and I guess I tried to convince myself that I had folded it here because I was still very proud of this. I was still very proud of the way I played this hand because I didn't go broke, because at any point in this hand, on the flop or the turn, I could have gotten all the money in very easily. And if this guy had bet the flop, like on a standard C bet, we probably would have gotten it in, right? This dude could have just led. If I was him with the deuces there into two players, I might lead some portion of the time. I thought I had folded it without calling the river bet, but I forgot that part. I just remember being very proud that I didn't go broke this hand. The overcall is fucking awful. That's the thing to learn here. If this player bets huge and then this guy's already called it, what the fuck do you beat? Like, one pair? So I was really proud of this hand not going broke. It sucks to lose it, but obviously I could have lost more. And, in all honesty, going from 35 or 55 blinds to 35, isn't bad when you flop this much fucking equity. Like, it's kind of bananas. And, you know, just calling the turn was the first thing that kind of makes me feel good about it, because then I have, you know, the board can give me any diamond. And if a diamond hits the river, I'm probably going to get paid something, because look at this cast of characters who's still calling, you know, behind over here. So I was proud of this one. I really thought I folded that to that river bet, but I guess I remembered it wrong. I guess I was just too proud that I didn't go broke, so I thought I folded it. But pocket sixes. I raise out of first, only get defended by the big blind. I bet 3.8. This is kind of a protection bet again. You were partying this hard, especially when you hit the ace in turn. I really was. I screamed. I was like, give me the ace of spades. And then the ace of clubs comes off, and I was like, yes! Like, it was so perfect. Because unless somebody has a set, I'm going to get a lot from this dude right here. Like, if that dude hadn't bet, I would have. You know what I mean? Like, if he had checked, I would have bet. This guy probably would have raised. If this guy just calls, I probably go all in. And then I go broke. But his mistake on the turn was getting too nervous because his hand was too strong. I bet this one. This is not so much a bluff as it is for protection, because he shouldn't have an ace a lot, and I just don't want to get beat by a 9 or something. He does call. 9 hits the turn. That can be scary, but it's less likely he has a 9. I decide to check it back and see what develops on the river. The river comes off, and he bets one big blind. This is utterly pointless. I thought about actually raising this here and turning my hand into a bluff, but it doesn't really require it, right? Because what can he have? Kind of just can have a 4, right? And he did. He had Jack 4. I guess he was blocker betting me and setting the price for showdown, so I should have raised, but this hand's a little too weak. I think if I had pocket... I'm going to say in-game, if I had pocket 10s, I would have raised. But I know the answer is if I have pocket 8s, I should raise. Yeah, that 8s is the minimum. 6s is just a little too meh, because now there's another overcard. So, yeah, I think 8s is the minimum I need here to raise. It's close. I should have just bet the turn again and gotten my value right there, because it is unlikely he has a 9. I kind of... in-game, I missed the fact that he could have a 4. I really missed that. If I had thought about it completely, I should have bet the turn, and then the river goes check, check. But this pot is much bigger. This pot actually is something like, well, because on the turn, I would be betting 6, maybe 5 blinds, right? Just to get value. And then on the river, you know, it's a 21 big blind pot instead of a 13 blind pot. So I count this as a mistake, although I count it as a mistake that top poker players will argue that it's a mistake. Like, some will say, yes, it is. Like, Jonathan Little would tell me this is a mistake all day, because he's GTO perfect. And so would Doug Polk. They would tell me this is a mistake as well. But other players, you know, who might be more conservative or might be more field players would say that this was played perfectly. So it just kind of depends on who you want to be, you know. Ace-King offsuit. See raise. I decide a raise and a call. I have a lot of blinds. I decide to 3-bet. I'm perfectly happy to get it in here, even though I have this monster stack. Well, it's a monster stack, but it's below average. How you like that? I got 16K, but the average is 25. But it is a lot of blinds. But, you know, this is early in the tournament, and it's a good spot to get it in. We get called, and we just showdown. Or we're just against the original raiser. Ace, King, Queen. I decided to go ahead and bet it. And this was more so for value than anything else. Looking back, I should have bet like 10 blinds, maybe 9. Maybe this bet's a little bit too big, a little bit too greedy. But I did feel like I had a higher percentage of getting called on the flop than I do any other street. So I went for extra value. So that was my thinking. And it worked. I got called. And then on the turn, I figured, well, if he called that, then we're just going to try to work the money in. This is a mistake. I should have bet much smaller. I shouldn't let it go check, check. Now, we have a pot-size bet, right? So, or less than a pot-size bet. So, if my true read is that this guy has ace-jack or even king-queen or something like that, or ace-queen, I guess not really ace-queen usually, I should just be jamming here because those hands are strong enough that I have to have exactly ace king to beat them, or aces or kings. So the bet here is either a jam or it's super small. The turn bet here could be 15 blinds. It could be 18 blinds. You might even want to go as far enough as to go 10 blinds. Like if I bet 10 blinds on the flop and then 10 blinds on the turn, I'll bet you the turn gets check raised. And then we get all the money in, probably versus one pair. But as it is, I fucked this one up, and I bet too big, and I did what he knew I was doing. I was trying to get all the money in. So this is a mistake. It's an interesting mistake, but it's a mistake. The other move here would have been to, I guess I could check also because I have the board so locked, and allow this player to bluff the river. Although he wasn't that kind of player, as you can see. He only played 13% of hands. He only raised 4%. So I think betting is the answer. I just think I bet too much on the flop and too much on the turn. If I'm going to bet that much on the flop, I should underbet the turn. Like if I bet 12 on the flop, if I bet the turn for 9, holy shit, does that confuse people, and they will raise it. So I fucked this one up. I'm going to say that for sure. This is one where I played bad and won. But I actually lost because I should have won more money. Defend with the 8-5. I remember this one. This is interesting. So it goes check, check. 3 on the turn. I decide to go ahead and bet for value. I get called. Deuce on the river. I check it, and this was to induce a bluff. It did not. So I wanted to mark this one to kind of pat myself on the back because this one comes up 100 times a day, and it's like, oh, I have the best hand most likely on the turn, right? So I'm going to go ahead and bet for value. I got good value, 2/3 pot, somewhere in there, about 60%. Got called, right, because there was a draw. The river bricked, and then there's no point in betting here, right? Because I'm only getting called if I bet by a hand that beats me. So if I check it, I give my opponent the opportunity to bluff. He didn't take it. He probably should have. I got the most versus a no value hand, I think. So pretty good. I also charged the draw on the turn. That's another thing to remember to do. So I just wanted to illustrate that one. It just comes up so often. This was fun. We were on the bubble here, about 5 or 6 away from the cash, and this player has a similar stats to me, which lets me know that he's playing correctly on the bubble. He's raising more. He had started amping it up when we got down to about 20 players from the money, and I looked around this table and said, I'm one of the bigger stacks, and I have position on this guy. I got to start taking these pots away. So I decided to 3-bet the ace-4 suited on the button. Not exactly something you would always do, but on the bubble, this is good enough. Because when it gets back to him and he folds, that's great. We win a nice big pot. And when he jams, we can actually fold, right? Like, my raise, let's see here. Oh, God damn it, I did it again. If he jams here, we can easily fold. You know what I'm saying? But taking these small shots, I just won an extra 2, 3.5, 4.5 blinds by making this 3-bet. And this is a very low-risk scenario because this player is just going for a steal, so he's opening wider. When they open wider, you 3-bet wider to steal. 3-betting to steal, I don't think people do enough. I think they do it, but they don't know why they're doing it. Pocket 10s. We make it 2.5. We get 3-bet to 7 big blinds. Fairly standard, a little bit low. The flop comes off 8-6 deuce. I decide to go ahead and check. Player bets 4 big blinds. I decide to just call it. I feel like I'm ahead, but I want to see what happens on the turn. This bet is so micro that in game I said, oh, I'm either way ahead or way behind. So I just called it. Make the 10 on the turn, but it also makes a flush draw possible. Oh, Sergeant is sleeping with his eyes open and barking. What you doing, buddy? He's got his eyes wide open. That's hilarious. I decide to check the 10 on the turn. Our opponent bets 18 blinds now. This is a monstrous bet. And this was a fun hand because what about to go into the Worry about to go into the... You're putting he's doing the food dehydrator. Eric got himself a gift as a food dehydrator, and he's dehydrating everything in his house. Everything's beef jerky. So this player bets 18 on the turn, and this is when the guy was sitting there thinking. I believe I said in game, the bigger the bet here. Fermenting beer, actually, nice. You just like making things age in your house. So when the bigger this player bets, I believe the weaker his hand is. And I said in game he's not smart enough to fold a flush draw when I jam. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I jammed it all in. We started this hand with over 50 blinds apiece. That's fucking bananas. I mean, if you look, we start the hand with 26K. You only start this tournament with 10,000 chips. So we're deep. And we're both 2.5x. The average is 21K. We're doing very well, right? But yeah, Scratch is king after finding out I'm allergic to corn. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because a lot of beers are corn-based. That's interesting. Or not corn-based, but they're supplemented with corn syrup. So I jam here, and the player took a long time, and I was like, oh, he's not folding the ace-king with like the ace of diamond or ace of hearts. And sure enough, he called, and I was wrong. He had the ace-king with the king of hearts, but pretty much the same thing. In this scenario, we got the player to totally hang himself, and just this monstrous pot deep in the tournament. I mean, this puts me at 60,000, 3 times the average. Pretty fucking nuts, right? So just calling the flop is what did it. Yeah, he could have hit an ace or a king, and when he does and he bets, I just fold. But when the board runs out correctly, we get it all. Like, if you can lose small pots and win big ones, that's kind of how you win poker tournaments. Like, you're going to lose pots, so go ahead and lose them. Pocket tens again. We see a limp here. I make a raise. Comes off queen high. Again, I'm not really worried about it because there's only the queen, so I go ahead and check back. I want to see what happens here. I check the turn just because I feel like I'm not going to get any value. Plus, there is a small chance that I'm beat. Plus, I have a gut shot. So the player goes ahead and bets. And again, we're seeing the, a little bit better than half pot, or a little, or blah, 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 blah. It is half pot. The half pot bet, which again doesn't really mean much. It's kind of a value play, but what value hands does this guy have here? Flushes? I guess. It's more than likely draws, right? But he could have a queen. He could have a hand like, he limped it, right? So we can't give him credit for king, queen or something like that. But if he had like queen 10 or, queen jack or, some weird flush combination, that's fine. There's a lot of eights out there. He could have pocket eights. He could have, I don't know, just a lot of shit like that. So this bet really doesn't mean anything. This is kind of like setting the price to get to the river. In this particular instance, I believe I'm okay with it because my hand isn't top pair. If it was top pair, I'd probably be raising here. Jack on the river is not a great card. Makes a lot of 2-pair combos. I decide to check, and the player checks back. And he just has a 6. He just made a 6 on the turn and decided to bet it. Kind of a pointless bet. Here's the thing. When he bets the turn and then takes no shot on the river, like on the river here, if he had bet like, even after his bad turn bet, if he had bet like 13 or 14 blinds on the river, I kind of really can't call. So you got to understand that, especially in today's meta, you're going to have to bet twice the grand majority of the time to win pots. And when you start thinking in that manner, you can go, okay, I'm going to bet here this much because on the river I want to bet this much. You know what I'm saying? And you'll start thinking ahead and setting up those 2 barrels. He could have easily won this pot, and he just decided not to. It really was up to him. He never even gave himself a chance to win it. So this is a good mistake that I wanted to point out. And I did get max value, obviously, but through no fault of my own. He wasn't calling a river bet, and I wasn't making a river bet, and I wasn't raising the turn. You know what I'm saying? And he wasn't calling a bet on the turn. So I got the max value because of nothing I did. All I had to do was hit call in logical situations. Ace 5 suited. We see a call, or a raise and a call. I decided to go ahead and call it, even though these players are at a shorter stack than me, it's still, my stack is good. I'm right on the average, so I don't need to take unnecessary risks by being like just an unbelievable chip bully. Plus, ace-5 is strong enough to want to flop it. Cool. Flop comes off 10-6-10. Nothing there really for me. But it goes check, check, and I just looked around and went, oh, I'm the big stack. Cool. So I just bet 1/3 pot here, because how often do one of these players have a 10 or something they can continue that isn't a flush draw? And if a flush draw continues, they know I'm going to bet the turn. So they're going to have to call 3 big blinds and then be facing a much bigger bet on the turn if the flush draw misses, and probably not get paid when the flush draw hits. So this is a perfect storm of reasons why betting small works perfectly. Oh, Courtney's home. Ace-10 suited. This was a mistake. I think I remember this one as a mistake. Oh, it's different ace-10. This player opens. I decide to 3-bet from the button. He calls, flop the flush draw. It goes check, check. Queen on the turn. Player bets, and once again, half pot bet means nothing. I decide to fold this one, and I really think I fucked this up. I definitely think I should have raised here. I think it was silly not to c-bet it. And when the queen pairs the turn, I think I can just jam here and get the fold. So that was definitely a mistake. I think I just kind of lost focus for a minute in game. But looking back, this is 100% a mistake. Hey, baby. How many more of these do I have left? Oh, my God. All right, here's the last one. Pocket kings. Raise get called. There's an ace on the flop, but not too much of a factor. Check, check. 8 on the turn. Player bets 2/3 pot. In game, I said this is never an ace, and this bet is usually wrong. So this is usually a draw or one pair, and unless he's got an ace, I'm cool. So I decided to just call it because he doesn't have enough chips. I'm never going to fold to a river jam from this guy. So looking at this, there's going to be 15 in the pot, and if he is bluffing, I want to give him that opportunity. And is he going to call me with a 10 or a 5 or an 8 right here if I jam on him? Honestly, probably not, because we were in the cash. This player had played some really stupid things and just folded for when his tournament life was at stake. So, but I think most players are not going to call here with like 5-6 or Queen 10 or something like that. Like, it's just not a thing. Queen 10 maybe, King 10 for sure, but like 8-7 or something, they're not going to call, right? It's a big blind defense. They're going to feel like we're trapping. They're going to know they're going to have to hit. So why jam here? There's no purpose. The river comes off a 9. Doesn't really mean much. He jams, and of course our plan was to call anyway. And in this specific... Now look, I'm 75% to win, right? In this specific instance, he did beat me. But I said in game, unless he has some kind of funky 2-pair, I'm going to win this one every time. And, this was the 10% of the time where he ran out a funky 2-pair. What am I going to do? On the turn, he's got 5 outs. That means I'm going to win it 90% of the time. So I decided right then and there, all right, I'm not folding. I'm going to try to get this guy to put all his money in. And this was the best play. It just happened to be one of the ones where it didn't work. What are you going to do? But it was the best play. I absolutely 100% believe that. Oh my God, there are more of these? How many more? All right, there's 2 more. All right. 9-8 offsuit. This is an interesting one, I think. C-raise, it's very deep in the tournament. You can see the average stack is 336,000. I have over that, so I'm doing very well. Play raise, 2 big blinds. We call, make a 9. Check, and he bets a quarter pot, like, pretty much. Like, this is just ridiculous. Never fold to these. There's no hand I can really fold here if I have anything. So I call, 6 on the turn. Check, check, and there's a river of now 4 hearts. So he checked the turn. Can he have me beat here? I mean, for sure. He can have a little baby heart in his hand. He could definitely have a queen in his hand. He doesn't likely have a king too much because I think he would have bet the turn bigger or the flop. He would have bet the turn or bet the flop bigger. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to turn our hand into a bluff. And we don't have to bet much, right? it could look like, well, we called with whatever, and then we picked up the flush draw, and then we made the flush, right? Or it could look like we had the nut flush draw, made the flush on the turn, and then, now we're trying to get some value. So this is a good small bet that you can make, and because the blinds are so big, it's actually quite significant. You can see this is a 48,000 bet into a 128,000 chip pot, and it's going to hurt him if he calls. I'm already going to swing to higher chips than him, but now it's going to be much worse. So he just folds, and it's a nice little turn your hand into a bluff moment that made me the table chip leader, which was very nice. And I think this is the last one coming up. Yep, pocket queens. I decided to raise to only 2.5 from the small blind. Player does call ace on the flop. Again, we're in that situation where there is an overcard, but we should have the ace. He should not ever have the ace, ever, right? Because he would have put us all in. I only have 15 blinds. If he has ace 10 here, he should just jam on me, right? He's got 50 big blinds, so he never has an ace here. So I decided to go ahead and check, and the turn comes off an 8, looks pretty good. I decide to bet half pot. Now you see I'm betting half pot because I'm trying to get called, right? I'm trying to get called or raised right here. I'm not doing this to bluff him, right? This is a value bet. Don't do this as bluffs. He calls, turn comes off a jack. I said in game, I feel like I want to give him a chance to bluff. He didn't take it, but we did get max value. I think if the jack, now here's the thing. He called me on the turn with king jack offsuit, right? He called this half pot bet. If the jack doesn't hit the river, if the river is a fucking deuce, right, and I check, is he bluffing? Fuck yes, he's bluffing. It's only because he gained showdown value, right? That's why he checked. If he hadn't hit that jack, I think I get the pure double here. Because if I'm him, I'm just going to jam all in if the deuce hits the river. Now, if I'm him, I'd also like to do it with the king of diamonds in my hand, but or no diamond. But I think on the river here, if the jack doesn't hit, a good player I think jams all in. I don't know if this player is a bad player. I think most likely I'm going to see a bet of 6 or 7 blinds, and I'm going to snap call it all day, just because there's no point to raising. So this is one where the river killed my action. And you say, well, how can you make the call? It just makes logical sense. So I just wanted to point that one out. That's the end of the hand reviews. Oh, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. We've been on for an hour. Let me move this over. Let's go ahead and try to get through these sections on the Jonathan Little stuff. This is part of the series that I'm going through of the Tournament Masterclass. I want to finish up these last two. Great Fox, thanks. Great job, man. Thank you, man. We're not done yet. It's Monday. Monday's a great day for study. So let's go to the implementable strategies now of the stuff that we've put together. We talked about pot odds and range, pot odds, equity individually, and now we're going to be trying to put it all together. So let me mute my playback and then put this on so you guys can hear it. And let's go to the next step and try to finish this first section today.
Now let's discuss what separates this course from basically every other poker course that you can find, many of which charge a whole lot more for access. Some of them are charging $1,500 or more for content that is not actually implementable. And when I say that, what I mean is a lot of courses out there will show you the game theory optimal strategy for various spots, tell you to memorize it, and then tell you to do it. The problem with that, though, is that humans are very bad at actually implementing the game theory optimal strategy. The game theory optimal strategy, by the way, is solved using, well, very, very complicated math, and you need a high-end computer and a $1,000 program called PioSolver, or an even more expensive program called MunkerSolver to solve. And it's a strategy that makes you very, very difficult to play against, to the point that if you use that strategy perfectly, your opponents will either break even or lose against you. The problem is that humans have a tough time implementing it, and you certainly cannot memorize every situation or even a subset of every situation as some other high-end poker courses ask you to do. In order to actually succeed long-term at the poker table, you need to know how to develop a strategy that is close enough to the game theory optimal strategy, and also how to apply it at the table. So let me show you what I mean. Here we have two different pre-flop range charts. that are comprised of basically the same percentage of hands in each category. So take a look at this, right? This is what you should do from the big blind versus a cutoff, 2 big blind raise, 15 big blinds deep. Here we have the game theory optimal strategy, and here we have the implementable strategy. Okay? So take a look at these. The green on the GTO strategy is call, the red is all in. Over here, the blue is call, the red is all in. Okay? So as you can see here, pocket aces in both instances is played by calling 100% of the time. So that's easy, just call in both scenarios. Here, ace-king suited is always called, it's all red. But take a look at ace-9 suited. You see, ace-9 suited in the game theory optimal strategy is pushed all in 67% of the time and called 33% of the time. Well, it turns out humans have a really difficult time doing it exactly 67.4% of the time. So what we've done here is we've taken some of these hands that are mixed and essentially combined them. So notice ace-9 suited we have as an all-in, but king-5 suited, which is also an all-in or a call, we have as a call. And that's going to make it to where the rough proportions of your all-in to your call to your fold range are pretty much the same, except for now you can just look at this chart and straight up follow it and know you're playing very, very close to the game theory optimal strategy. And that's going to work out very, very well for you in the long run, because now instead of having to think, oh, I have ace-5 offsuit, should I go all in or should I call it this time? Now you can just look at the chart and see, all right, it's a call. And notice here, the way we essentially make this is we take ace-5 offsuit and ace-2 offsuit. Notice they're both about 50% each. We combine it. Shove one of them, call the other one, and life is easy. So we're going to be presenting a lot of pre-flop range charts that are all implementable. I do not want you to go out and buy a $1,000 program and buy a high-end computer to run these solutions, because we've already done it for you and we've made it implementable to where you can use it at the table. You're going to find life is going to be way easier when you develop strategies that are perhaps not the perfect game theory optimal strategy, but are very close. Let's take a look at a situation where now, same spot, big blind versus cutoff.
Now, I want to break in here for a second. Implementable strategy. So, playing online, there's a thing that says, well, you should memorize the perfect GTO strategy because you can apply it, because you can have a random number generator, right? So let's say you have a random number generator, you let it randomly generate between 1 and 100, and if a hand is jammed 67.2% of the time, you call it 67, and if the number is, 67 or lower, you jam it. If it's 68 or higher, you fold it, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? If it's 33 or lower, you fold it. If it's 34 or higher, you jam it. And you can just hit that random number generator. And when Doug Polk was playing his match with Daniel Negreanu, you saw him doing this, okay? You saw him sitting there, and when he was streaming it on his side, you could see him going, okay, I'm going to do that this amount of time. And he spun the hand, and you could see him look to the side and go, okay. And then he just did it. So he was implementing a perfectly GTO strategy, randomized with the random number generator. But it's against the... Now, him and Negreanu had agreed that they would use charts and that they could use whatever tools they wanted in-game as long as it was just their own theory. So they could use charts, they could use random number generators, they could use calculators, they could use whatever they wanted to play against each other. They conceded to this. But you cannot use tools online to play, or you are cheating. You can use a concession like a HUD, a heads-up device that gathers information on players. That's a perfectly fine thing to use. What you're not allowed to do is look up what to do with your hands in the tools section over here under GTO preflop and look it up before you act. You guys will see me sometimes on stream make a decision, fold, raise, jam, whatever, and once all the money's in, I'll sit there and go, you know what, let me look that one up, and I'll bring it over and look it up in real time on the stream with you. If I was to do that before I acted and take the advice of the chart, I would be cheating. Not only is it cheating, which who gives a fuck, it's also a good way to get banned from poker sites. You're not allowed to use outside tools to assist you during play. That's the same thing that bots are doing. So charts are classified under this. So you can't perfectly play GTO unless you can memorize these charts perfectly and then say, well, out of the last 100 times I've been in this exact situation, I have jammed all in 58 times. So maybe I should just call this one because it's a 70-30. That's fucking ludicrous. And people using things to randomize, you're just really jacking off. Like, you just really don't need it. You need a general strategy, and things like a hand that's a 66% jam, right? Let's say you know it's a jam 2/3 of the time and a fold 1/3 of the time. Well, you could randomize it, sure. You could look at a clock and say if it's between if the second hand is between 1 and 15, you fold it. If it's not, then you jam it, right? That's 25%, right? Whatever. Dan Harrington used to do that. He talked about that in his book. He would look at his watch when he wanted to randomize something, and this is way before these theories came around. But what you could really do is say, all right, we're on the bubble here. You know what I'm saying? Let's say it's a different stage of the tournament. If it's earlier in the tournament, you're going to re-enter anyway. Well, then that 2/3 jam kind of is a jam all the time because you're going to re-enter anyway and get more chips. And you know what I'm saying? And if you're going to throw the buy-in away, you might as well throw it away early. Now, if you're on the bubble, or even worse, the final table bubble, maybe it's not a jam. Maybe that's one where you go, you know what? I don't need to take this risk here because I'm either going to cash or I'm going to make the final table fairly easily. So maybe I don't jam this one here. And you can use that to influence your decisions. So that's what we're saying about having an implementable strategy, is knowing the percentages and making good decisions based on them, based on the stage of the tournament. And this is for tournament poker. Now, granted, all these things apply to all forms of poker, but this is the tournament masterclass, so that's what we're talking about. So in those situations, that's what I suggest you do. All right, let's continue.
The flop comes 10, 7, 6, 2 hearts. Big blind checks, the opponent bets. Okay? Now, what should we do? Well, if you look at this, red is all in, green is call, blue is fold. Gray is not in your range, because if we go back over here, we see like pocket kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks always go all in pre-flop, so you can't have those hands anymore on the flop, right? Because you would have gone all in with them. So anyway, as you see, like king 8 offsuit here, sometimes you're supposed to go all in with it, sometimes you're supposed to call with it, sometimes you're supposed to fold with it. That is very, very difficult to do. And we see that be the case for many hands, like 8-4 suited. You're supposed to raise it 18.1% of the time and call it 81.6% of the time and fold it every once in a while. You see, even like 9-6 suited is supposed to raise 5% of the time. How in the world are humans supposed to, first off, memorize this for every situation, or even, let's say, 100 common situations, and then implement that at the table? Hate to break it to you, it's not going to happen. It is essentially impossible to do. So
it should be noted that that statement coming from Jonathan Little, that humans are not going to be able to implement a realistic strategy here based on this chart because of the fact that they're not going to memorize 100 situations for every common situation and implement them, because humans aren't good at doing that. It should be noted that's Jonathan Little saying it. That's Jonathan Little saying, I can't do this. Okay, and he's probably the GTO robot that exists walking around in the world eating food, but just being GTO every other part of his life. Like, crazy that the robot is saying that, right? So take that into account here.
So what we have done is we have devised a way to give you a strategy that will explain how to figure out how to play each hand. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the perfect game theory optimal strategy, but it's going to be somewhat close. And we're going to go deep into this in the post-flop section, so I understand this may be a bit overwhelming right now, but we will explain to you how to make a chart exactly like this and how to use logic to figure out how to play each type of hand. So you see here, we would be raising with our best made hands and our draws in this instance, which comes out to about 21% of hands. Notice over here, the game theory optimal strategy raises 16% of hands, which is, you know, we're raising a little bit more often. It's not perfect. The calling range we have.
That being said, I think when you're devising a raising range, you're better off erring on the side of aggression. So I like raising more often than I like, you know, calling. So for me, this is more optimal because you give yourself more chances to win when you bet and raise, you know?
Have is 42% of hands, 43% of hands. You see here, the game theory optimal strategy calls a little bit more, and the folding range comes out to be roughly the same. And using a strategy I've developed that I have shared with thousands of students, they are able to play pretty close to the game theory optimal strategy in game and use essentially 100% frequencies like this, so they don't have to worry about using what's referred to as a mixed strategy, where sometimes you raise, sometimes you call, sometimes you fold. And that is very, very, very important. You want to make sure that you can use strategies that you can actually apply, and that's what we're going to be teaching you throughout this course.
So it does seem overwhelming, but trust me, I've been through this course almost 2 full times now in the past year and change. And I will say it does get much easier. And when he says you can make a chart to do this, don't do what I did. Don't sit there and print out blank versions of this and then write out scenarios and check off calls, raises, and folds. I did come up with a good study method doing that, where I would randomly generate hands with dice or by pulling them out of a deck and putting out the flop and saying, this is what I should do, then checking them off and then checking them on the computer and seeing if I was correct. That's a good theory. But when he says make charts, what I believe he's saying is in your head. You'll understand in this situation, this is what the chart looks like. And for people like me, I have a little bit of an advantage in this area and a disadvantage in other areas in life. My advantage is I don't translate well to written language. I translate better to visual and auditory learning. So for me, this course is ideal. When I'm at the table, I'm actually seeing these charts in my head color-coded when I'm defining the range. It's just part of my learning disability. So I have an advantage there for this thing. But here's the thing. If you realize you learn better with a language-based scenario, you should be, while you're watching this, write it down. That's how you reinforce the learning. Make the charts, literally print out blank ones. And when you see stuff like this, just highlight them in different colors. And that will imprint it on your brain. These are different learning techniques that people with learning disabilities use to make the content that they have to learn more palatable and easier for them to digest. And I will say it made a world of difference to me in studying poker when I started studying for I'm going to call them advantages that I was given, even though for every other part of life it's a disadvantage. It kept me fucked out of college. I had to cheat my way through high school. All those things, but once I learned properly how to learn after I found out I was dyslexic in this specific form, it made me accelerate my ability in poker to an amazing degree that I thought I would never reach. And I used to think that there was a lid on how much I could learn and how much I could understand. I truly don't believe that anymore. I think that if I keep studying, if I live long enough, I will be the best player, honestly, in the world. If I was to live 500 years with the way I study now, I truly believe I'd be better than anybody else in the world because I've learned a better method for studying for the way I learn. It's just a matter of if I'm going to learn it all fast enough by the time I die. So it's good to have that feeling inside, knowing that there is no lid on your knowledge or your IQ. Because I got IQ, it's like having... IQ is like having a great engine in your car, right? Having a Ferrari engine, but having a learning disability is putting, 86 octane in it. It just doesn't work because it doesn't go fast enough. But when you learn how to put the right gas in, it takes off like a shot, right? So, this is just a mark complete. There's no quiz here. We're marking that as complete and moving on to the next lesson.
A major difference between tournaments and cash games is that chips change.
I know I'm interrupting very frequently, but this is a big concept. Your chips are worth way more later than they are earlier. Just bear that in mind.
Change value throughout the course of a tournament, whereas in a cash game, if you buy in for, let's say, $100, whenever you want to cash out, you can take that $100 off the table. Or if you get up to $200, you can take it off the table, right? And also, in a tournament, even if you double your stack from, let's say, a starting stack to 2 starting stacks, it doesn't actually mean you double your equity in the tournament.
Right.
For example, if you're playing a $100 tournament and you start with 1 million chips, as is the case in some tournaments nowadays, if you double up to 2 million chips, it doesn't mean your chips are actually worth $200. In reality, they're worth a little bit less. So let's go into that just a little bit. So when you do buy in, If you double up, you're not exactly doubling your equity, but it is almost the same. If you start in a $100 tournament and you double up right off the bat, your chip stack goes from being worth maybe $100 to $195 or something like that. So almost a full double up. So early in a tournament, you should pretty much play as if you are playing a game with no POUT implications, because only 1 in 7 players get in the money, right? And you're actually nowhere near getting in the money. However, as players go broke and you start getting closer to getting in the money, well, now you actually should significantly shy away from any situation that could result in you losing a large chunk of your stack or all of your stack. And that's because if you just kind of hang around and don't do anything super risky, you are going to at least collect a minimum cash. And while collecting a minimum cash is not like the ultimate goal of the tournament, if you are sitting in a tournament with a medium stack, quite often that is what you should aim to collect.
Hotly contested, and on stream, I've been in tournaments where I'm sitting there going, and I'm telling people, I'm like, normally this is a raise, but because of this stage in the tournament, I have to fold this hand. And players have asked me, like, what are you talking about? You have to go for the win. That's true, but you don't have to take excessive risk. Excessive risk means costing yourself the cash versus putting yourself in a position to win. Now, if it's a situation where you're putting yourself in a good position to win the tournament, like there's times where I'm more likely to go broke on the bubble with more chips than I am with less chips. And it actually happened, I think 2 sessions ago, where I'd made trip queens on the river and this guy overbet this monster pot. And after we ran the numbers, it turns out that I was right. But the way the board ran out, I was going to win the pot 98% of the time. 98% of the time. And I was I was third or fourth in chips, and the other guy was the actual chip leader in the tournament. This is 2 away from the money. I'm more likely to go broke there than I am at any other point if I had had less chips. If I only had 20 blinds, I wouldn't even have been in the hand. But because of the way the hand played out, I raised, the dude 3-bet, I called it. The flop came out good for nobody. The turn came off, I made a pair. The river came off, I made trips with ace-queen. I made trip queens. And the only hand that was beating me at that point was a set, which was unreasonable because the player, I had 3-bet and the player had called. It was the other way around. He hadn't 3-bet and I called. So there was no set of kings. There was no set of tens. There was no set of nines. So, or there might have been a set of nines, but that's the one combination of hand. I figured out in game that the only hands that realistically I was losing to was a set of nines or ace jack specifically, and ace jack being the least likely one because the board was paired. So for me, I even discounted the ace jack. Now this player made a very good move, and we bet reasonably. We checked the flop. I bet reasonably on the turn. He bet reasonably on the turn. I called it because I had second pair, and on the river I made trips. It was just a perfect storm, and on the river there was like 20 in the pot, and he jammed 35 blinds into it, and I had like 31 blinds or something like that. And we were on the stone bubs, and 98% of the time I'm going to win that hand at showdown. And I knew it at the time, and I said, this sucks if I'm beat. But there's only 2 combinations of hands that beat me in the entire deck, so that means I have to call. I called it. He rolled over ace jack, and it was just one of those coolers. But if I had had 30 blinds or less, I would not have even played the hand. He would have raised, or I would have raised. Sorry, he would have raised. I would have 3-bet. The flop would have come off, bad for both of us, and I would have checked it because I would have had to. The turn would have come off a queen, and now the board is king, 9, 10, queen, and he bets, and I would have just folded because I wouldn't have had enough to continue. I would have only had like 20 blinds left at that point, and it's just there's too many hands that beat me. Ace king crushes me, and we're just going to get it in. So that's a situation where I would have cashed the tournament because I had less chips. But because I had more chips, I was putting myself in a position to win the tournament. So those situations come up. But like I said, with the smaller stack, you're going to sometimes need to just hang around and wait for the better opportunities. And a lot of those are going to come after you cash, because then you don't devalue all the work and your stack by just going crazy.
So that becomes even more profound once you get to the bubble, where Let's say there are 99 players in a tournament and 95 of them get paid. Well, if you're sitting there with a solid medium stack, all you really have to do is fold for the next 10, 20, 30 minutes, and you are guaranteed a minimum cash. So in that scenario, you really do just want to hang out when you have a medium stack. However, if you have a big stack, you may think, well, I'm guaranteed a minimum cash, I should just play tight, right? Well, actually, no. At that point, you should make a point to run over the medium stacks who can hang out, right? They're not going to do anything to risk going broke, but realize if you do happen to find yourself in a rough spot against a medium stack when you have a big stack, well, you're not going to lose all your chips, right? So you actually get to apply a lot of pressure to those people, and that is a very, very important part of poker tournaments. And once you get to the final table, remember how we discussed earlier how the payouts are very skewed towards first, second, and third. A lot of your opponents may not fully realize that, and they may just think that they need to move up from 9th place to 8th place because to them that's a big deal and a big success. But in reality, quite often it is not.
It's a big swing when you get to final tables. Playing for those top 3 spots, it's kind of like that same situation where there's 99 players left and 95 of them get paid. It's kind of the same thing where you're better off being less active until you can vault into those top 3 spots with a really monster hand in a good situation, or outlast other players, because as they drop off, you make money immediately every time a player goes out, and you get closer and closer and closer to where, you know, a good 35-40% of the prize pool is, which is in the top 3 places. And, you know, top prize being, you know, sometimes as much as 25-30% of the total prize pool on sites like WSOP. On ACR, it's somewhere between 15 and 20%, usually right around 18% actually. But that's a huge chunk. You know, that's the difference between going to the final table. You know, 9th place would be $100 and first place is $1,000. You know what I'm saying? So it's a much different scenario, and you can re-implement that strategy that was on the direct bubble as you can at the final table, depending on your chip stack.
So let's take a look at our previous example where we raised to 2.2 big blinds out of our 25 big blind effective stack from the button, and then the big blind goes all in with this wide range. We already know that in this scenario we need to win about 44.3% of the time to justify calling. So in most normal scenarios, you're going to want to call when you have maybe 46% equity or more, right? However, if we were on the bubble of a tournament, you may actually need closer to like 53% equity. Or if you look at an extreme scenario, say, you know, we have our 25 big blind stack, if our opponents in this tournament all have, you know, say there's like 6 people sitting around with 1 big blind, right? Now we're really guaranteed to get in the money. So in that situation, we may actually need 75% equity or more because we do not want to risk going broke when all we have to do is just wait for one of the...
This is that situation that I was talking about today, one of the first hands that I reviewed, where I had the king-jack suited versus the opponent's range. The only hand I should be calling it with, because I need that 75%, because the chips are too valuable to me at that point, even though I am the big stack. That's why the range turned into queen plus, which is super tight, and it's because the risk was not worth the reward. You know what I'm saying? So in that case, you want it to be taking very little risk for a moderate reward versus taking a large risk for a same moderate reward. That's where the term ICM suicide comes in. That's when a player just does something super stupid when they could have just, you know, folded and gotten into the money or gone up a major, pay jump on a final table.
The multiple short stacks to go broke. This difference between the normal amount of equity you need and the additional equity you now need is referred to as the risk premium. And this is a very, very advanced mathematical concept that I will have some material on at the end of this masterclass. But the main takeaway here is that you really do want to avoid going broke when you can somewhat realistically and easily move up the payouts. That is very, very important, and you must make sure that you collect the free money when it really is free. And there are some times when it is free. So let's discuss a little bit more the scenarios where you really can apply a lot of pressure. So as the large stack, this is when you have more chips than your opponents for the most part, you really should just look to apply pressure to the medium stacks and also to the short stacks who are highly likely to be able to just hang out and move up the payout jumps. You're going to find that that is not the case early in a tournament. Early in a tournament, like I said, it's basically like you're playing a cash game to some extent. So as a large stack early in the tournament, you don't actually have that much of a significant advantage. But later in the tournament with a big stack, you have a big advantage. And remember how I said earlier in this masterclass how the best poker players in the world typically don't actually cash all that more often than the other players, but they win the tournament way more often. That's because they get a hold of big stacks and they know how to maximize their value when they have those big stacks. As a medium stack, usually you're just trying to hang around and not risk your stack in a scenario where it's marginal. However, you may find situations where the particular large stacks at your table aren't actually so concerned with crushing the medium stacks. Instead, they're thinking, I have a big stack, I just want to sit here and get some free money, which is a big mistake for them. But if you see them making that big mistake, you can in turn act like the big stack. You can run over the big stack, and you can also run over the shallower stacks who are just hanging around. As a short stack, you are usually in a pretty bad spot. It's very important to realize that short stacks come in various shortnesses, and also there may be multiple short stacks. For example, if you're in a scenario where there are 4 players with 1 big blind and you have 6 big blinds, you have a short stack, but you're also in pretty good shape because there are 4 other players who are really, really short.
Those are situations that come up a lot in satellites where you're short, but you have to look at it relatively to the field. And, it makes for a lot of interesting scenarios where you can have 8 big blinds and fold pocket aces pre-flop, to open the action, because it's just pointless to do anything because there's a couple players that have 1 big blind and you're 1 off getting the satellite seat, and, there's 18 players left in the tournament. You could just open fold aces. You don't even have to play it, with 8 big blinds because you're just a lock. You know what I'm saying? You can pretty much sit out because those guys are going to blind out. It's a very interesting situation that comes up, and I've got a couple of them on the VODs that are, people lost their shit, but I won the seat.
Alternatively, if you have 6 big blinds and the next shortest stack has 15 big blinds and then everybody else has 50 big blinds, well, you're the obvious short stack and you need to battle pretty hard to try to make something happen one way or the other. So let's take a look at a situation from a final table. Here we are on the button with ace 10 of spades, and in this scenario, everyone has 20 big blinds. I think we have 2 options in this scenario. We can either just go all in. I think that is fine. You're going to find that in situations where there are big payout implications, you very often should just take profitable all-in scenarios, because if you do raise and get jammed on, you still have to call off with a hand as good as ace 10 of spades, but you don't really love it. That said, I think ace 10 of spades is probably good enough to min raise and then call off. So either going all in or min raising in this scenario is perfectly acceptable. In this spot, we do min raise, we get jammed on, we make the call, and we're probably going to win on that board. So common spot, nothing really too exciting about this one. However, let's take a look at the same scenario, but now we've changed it a little bit. Take a second, look at this, tell me what's changed.
So on the previous one, all the stacks were the same, 20 big blinds. Now we have a stack here in the big blind with 40 blinds. We have a couple 20s. We have 2 guys with 1 big blind here. And, we're tied basically for second. This guy has the most chips. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us who have the same amount of chips. And then 2 guys who are really low, right? So there's 8 players left on this table. And 2 of them are pretty much going out. Like, they're done. Like, they don't have a chance. They're going to ante and blind off before the blinds get to them. So, they're going to have less than a blind in the big blind when it gets to them, if it gets there. So if these blinds are, the ante's 1K and, these stacks are, that means the stacks are, 20K and 20K and 40K, and these guys have 1K. Well, the ante is 1K. They're going to be all in the blind, the big blind ante, right there. So the best case scenario for them is to fold to the big blind ante and try to get up to 4 blinds, because that's all they're going to be eligible for by the time it comes around to them. So it's very interesting, but at the same time, this is one where we're open folding this ace 10 every time. We're not even going to play it.
Changed. Well, now, if you notice, there are 2 1 big blind stacks at the table. And also, there's a 40 big blind stack in the big blind. So now, if it folds around to me and I min raise, now the big blind is going to go all in very frequently, and assuming we're at a regular final table with normal payouts, this is going to go very, very poorly for me, because if I min raise and get jammed on, now I really have to fold, because I can just sit here and move up from eighth place to sixth place pretty easily. I realize every once in a while the cutoff and the low jack here will spin up their chips and have a whole lot of chips eventually. But for the most part, these two players are going to go broke, and we're going to get 2 free payout jumps. So in this scenario, if they do fold to me, you may say, well, then shouldn't we just go all in with our pretty good ace-10 of spades? And the answer is actually no. We should just fold. We can't even play this hand because of the presence of the 2 very tiny stacks. This is a situation that is highly, highly advantageous for the big stack because all of the 20 big blind stacks are really incentivized to just hang out and not do anything to risk their stacks. So this is a spot where we just have to fold and move forward. We will be discussing payout implications throughout this masterclass. It is a big topic, but we will have many, many examples to make sure that you fully understand these scenarios. In general, though, the main takeaway is when you have a big stack, you want to be leaning on the medium stacks and the short stacks that are not, like trying to get their stacks in because they realize they're next to go broke. If you're a medium stack, you want to be leaning on the short stacks and the big stacks that don't realize they're supposed to be playing rather aggressively. And if you are a short stack, well, figure out if you're actually short. If you actually are short, you have to make something happen. One thing I do want to point out before we wrap up this section is that whenever you do have a big stack and you are trying to apply pressure to the medium stacks or the short stacks, if they do go all in on you or re-raise you, they probably have a big hand. So one thing that really messes up a lot of players who don't have a lot of experience is they think with a big stack I'm supposed to be ramming and jamming and pushing my stack in all the time. But that will actually lead to you, well, losing your big stack, because if a medium stack who is incentivized to just sit there all of a sudden decides to put all their money in, they're probably not bluffing all that often. They probably have something good. So make sure you are still paying attention and being aware of what your opponents are doing. Remember, you make money when your opponents make mistakes. And in scenarios where they are highly incentivized just to play really straightforwardly, when they go all in on you, they probably have something good. So be smart, figure out where you are in relation to the other chip stacks, and then adjust accordingly. So now that we are through the introduction, we will be heading to the pre-flop section. We're going to be discussing all sorts of things pertaining to pre-flop play, take a few quizzes, and then I will see you there.
We're going to do the quiz here, and we'll finish up this section for the day. When there are payout implications as a middle stack, you should look to play few pots against the big stack. Seems reasonable to me because we have to play straightforward. And when Jonathan Little says straightforward, he means ABC, meaning the strength of our hand is going to dictate what we do. As the big stack, there are where there are payout implications compared to where there are no payout implications. You should play more pots than normal because you are the big stack. You should be smacking on these people. If there's no payout implications, you can wait. So big stack, there's payout implications. You should play more pots than normal because you are able to put your opponents in tournaments life at risk, allowing you to win more pots. Almost done. At the start of the tournament, there are essentially no payout implications. This is true because you're at the start of the tournament, only 1 in 7 are going to get paid, and we're miles away from that. So that's a true ball. Yeah, your chip EV poker is not exactly the same. Like he said, when you double your stack, it's not really worth double your buy-in because you don't know if you're going to even get to the money. Many tournaments, I've doubled and tripled the very first hand of the tournament and not cashed it. And that just happens sometimes. There's just nothing you can do. We're going to mark this as complete. And then I'm going to go back to the courses. And you can see we completed the first course in this one. We're going to go back to the full course. Here's the overview. Introduction and fundamentals with 9 topics. All the way completed. Introduction to fundamentals completed by, what is this, about half. So then next we'll go into pre-flop strategies. There's a lot in pre-flop. Like there's all stack sizes, 60 blinds and more, 35 to 60, 22 to 35, 12 to 22, and less than 12 big blinds. And then there's an on-the-flop strategy. There's a lot of stuff to go here. It is an actually really great course. It's probably my favorite from Jonathan Little's poker site. It is one of the newer ones, so it is one of the most up to date. But it is by far the most dense course he has on here. You can see we are now 2% complete with the entire course after 3 days of about. Well, let's see. Today we took another 45 minutes. So I'll say after about 3 hours of working through this first section, like on stream, maybe 4 hours, we are 2% of the way complete with this course. And that's watching the stuff, digesting it, and me adding my extra commentary, which kind of helps me make sure that I fully digest the stuff going through. So this is going to take a while. And I encourage you guys to watch this. I'm going to break it up into sections. And yeah, it's huge. But remember, it's the tournament master class. That concept of ICM payouts and payout implications, like he said, it's a huge topic. And with that part of it, he brings that up throughout the course, just kind of sprinkling it through, going, in this situation, we're working with this many blinds, this many this many that, blah, 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 blah. And he goes through all those parts. And then he says, but if you're on the bubble, or if you're on the final table, or if you're at the start of the tournament, these situations change. So there's no real section on ICM. It's kind of discussed at the end, the mathematics of it. But throughout the course, pay attention, because there's going to be little bits of knowledge sprinkled throughout there. Because ICM, while it's usually talked about as a factor when you're in the money or on the final table, it's actually something you have to think about the entire court, the entire tournament, because at times there are no payout implications, like early and through the middle when you get closer to the cash, and as you move up the cash, and as you get to the final table, it all changes. So just pay attention to that while we go through this. I'm going to start making, when we review this stuff, I'm going to make custom thumbnails for it, and it'll be on Twitch, but I'm also going to put it on a section in the YouTube where it'll be under it'll be under the daily Wake Up With Me streams, but I'm also going to number the parts of this course. So this would be the third time we've gone through this, sections of this course. I'm going to call this part 3 of the Jonathan Little course. So I haven't figured out how I'm going to name it yet, but it's going to say like, Tournament Masterclass, TMC part 3. And then we'll break it up and hopefully get through this thing in about 80 to 100, sections. So it'll be interesting. We'll probably get through it in less, probably like 60, because we're going through several sections at a time. But there's 80 of these total sections, so I don't know. We got a long way to go. But hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, today is not a play day for me. Most likely, I may play some cash later today. If I do, I'll stream it. But today, Monday, is usually my editing day. I'm going to try to work on getting out a new Jedi Mind Trick for the YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube and turn the alerts on so you know when that's up. And hopefully, I'll have it up tomorrow. If not, then probably tomorrow night. But yeah, so that's it. Have a great day, guys. I'm not going to throw you to a host. There's plenty of guys that are out there streaming. Have fun, and I'll see you tomorrow at noon for the next section of this masterclass.